For years, Princess Eugenie was never considered a threat. She was the royal who smiled quietly, who stood at the edge of balcony photos, who waved when expected and remained dutifully in the shadows. But that illusion shattered the moment she uncovered what had been buried beneath generations of silence. During a seemingly routine archival project at Frogmore meant to help digitize old documents and catalog the forgotten, Eugenie stumbled upon a letter that should never have seen the light of day. Its edges were worn, its seal cracked, but its message was devastating. It referenced something called the conditional heir clause, a term she'd never heard before. Her pulse quickened as she flipped through the next few pages, correspondence between senior royals, scrawled annotations, and veiled warnings about bloodlines that must remain obscured for the stability of the realm. What began as an afternoon task had turned into the ignition of a dynasty's unraveling. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Eugenie knew she couldn't ignore what she'd found. Over the next several days, she obsessed over the documents, cross-referencing estate ledgers from the late 1800s, pulling ancient trust agreements tied to the Duchy of Lancaster, and comparing signatures. The deeper she went, the more the truth began to flicker beneath the surface. This wasn't just an anomaly in the paperwork. It was a map to a secret royal arrangement that changed everything. Tucked in the margins of one document was a cryptic note. Should lineage diverge from accepted narrative, the clause must activate. She froze. Who had written it? And what did it mean by diverge from accepted narrative? Eugenie, a child of the monarchy but never its centerpiece, was now staring into the black hole at the center of her family's history. She didn't go to the palace. She didn't alert the archivist. Instead, she picked up the phone and called the one man who should have answers: her father, Prince Andrew. His response chilled her more than the documents. He didn't deny it. He didn't ask what she meant. He simply told her, "Some stories are best left buried, Eugenie." Then silence. A silence so cold it echoed. That was when the fear set in. This wasn't just a bureaucratic oversight. This was something someone had worked very hard to keep hidden. And now that she knew, she could never unknow it. Because this discovery didn't just threaten the past, it had the power to obliterate the present. The system of inheritance, of royal privilege and entitlement, of who gets what, and why it was all hanging by a thread. A thread Eugenie had just pulled. She considered stopping, walking away, pretending she hadn't read those words. But that wasn't an option anymore. Because the truth was bigger than her fear. And if this clause was real, and if what she suspected was true, then every member of the royal family, every duke, duchess, and potential future monarch was standing on borrowed time. But what began as an archival curiosity soon ignites a royal firestorm when Eugenie dares to confront the one person she was warned never to question: her grandmother, the Queen. Eugenie didn't just stumble upon a forgotten document, she opened a sealed envelope that hadn't seen the light of day since the Queen's final hours. Tucked inside a slim folder marked "to be opened posthumously" was a letter written in the Queen's unmistakable hand, steady, sharp, regal. The very act of opening it felt like betrayal, but Eugenie's hands moved before her doubts could catch up. What she read inside sent a chill through her soul. The opening line alone struck like lightning. There are truths too heavy for the crown to carry in life. It was a confession, a final reckoning, and it wasn't meant for the public or even the family. It was meant for one person. And yet Eugenie, trembling, held it in her hands. The letter was dated mere days before the Queen passed. Its tone was solemn, reflective, filled with sorrow, not for the family, but for a promise made and kept in silence. It referenced a confidential inheritance plan, one that was never brought before Parliament, never shared beyond a tightly controlled circle. Eugenie read, breath shallow, as the Queen revealed she had quietly redirected assets, properties, and titles not toward Charles, not even toward William, but toward individuals few in the current generation had ever acknowledged. A line leapt from the page: "This is to honor the agreement made with my father regarding Margaret's children. Though unrecognized by the institution, they remain part of our blood." The implications hit her like a wave. Eugenie's own place in the royal narrative, her security, her future had been deliberately circumvented. The Queen's words cut deeper with every sentence. "It was not my wish," she wrote, but my duty. A debt paid across generations, in silence. Eugenie's mind raced. Princess Margaret, always the shadow to Elizabeth's light, had endured heartbreak, sacrifice, and exile within her own family. But this letter suggested her descendants kept hidden. Unnamed were now being honored with an inheritance that should have passed through the visible royal line. And if this was true, then what did it mean for Eugenie and Beatrice? Were they not just overlooked, but deliberately excluded? She couldn't breathe. She had to share it. She reached out to Beatrice, hoping for clarity, hoping her sister might have some knowledge to ground this spiraling secret. But Beatrice was just as blindsided. When she read the letter, her hands shook. Her first words were barely a whisper. How long have they known? The sisters sat in silence, the weight of the truth suffocating them. They weren't just discovering a new line of inheritance, they were witnessing their own erasure. Generations of loyalty, of sacrifice, of presence on the royal stage, overwritten in a private, unseen ledger. For Eugenie, it wasn't about the money. It wasn't about titles or castles or legacy. It was the realization that everything she had been told about her place in the family was built on shifting sand. That her grandmother, the one figure she thought would protect her truth, had instead concealed another. And if this letter was only part of the story, what else had been hidden behind palace doors? What other truths had been buried beneath the marble silence of tradition? The questions consumed her. But as Eugenie digs deeper, she uncovers something far worse: proof that certain royal accounts were quietly siphoned to fund someone else's legacy. Where did hundreds of millions in royal assets actually go? That question consumed Eugenie in the days following her discovery of the Queen's letter. What had started as a confrontation with the past was now becoming a full-blown financial mystery, threatening to expose the monarchy's deepest manipulations. The more she searched, the more the numbers didn't make sense. Vast sums had quietly vanished, missing from known trusts, estates, and accounts long considered stable. Eugenie's instincts told her these weren't accounting errors. This was something orchestrated, carefully hidden behind layers of legal language and corporate shields. When she cross-referenced the Duchy of Lancaster's annual financial disclosures with internal estate documents, the inconsistencies screamed louder than any headline. Entire accounts had been emptied and rerouted. Not just recently, but over the course of a decade. The Crown's wealth was being drained, and no one was talking about it. What Eugenie found next shocked even her. A string of holding companies with obscure names registered in the Cayman Islands, Malta, and Luxembourg, all with indirect ties back to Windsor-adjacent figures. At first glance, there was nothing unusual, until she followed the trail deeper. These entities had purchased priceless artwork, auctioned quietly through private brokers, traced back to royal inventories that hadn't been updated since the Queen's passing. Paintings, jewelry, land deeds gone. Not stolen, not lost, but sold. Eugenie confronted a financial advisor once employed by Clarence House. His response was a whisper of a warning. "You're not supposed to see this." And that was all she needed to know. She was on the right path, though it meant walking directly into a storm. Her heart sank when she found the Ghost Trust. Hidden under layers of aliases and redirections, it was unlike anything she'd ever seen. No beneficiary listed, no trustee name disclosed. Just a vault of redirected wealth tied to a file labeled Legacy Contingency. But what legacy? And for whom? Even more chilling was the timing. One of the largest withdrawals from the trust happened the exact week Prince Harry officially stepped back from royal duties. Was that a coincidence? Or had this trust been created as a financial buffer for someone's departure? Or someone's arrival? The implications were staggering. Someone had planned this. Someone had siphoned inheritance funds away from the known royal line and funneled it into something entirely separate. And no one, not even Charles, had ever spoken of it. The closer she got, the more obstructed the path became. Access was revoked. Sources clammed up. Emails vanished. Eugenie realized this wasn't just about hidden money, it was about preserving a narrative. Because this money, this trust, this system, it wasn't meant to benefit her. Or Beatrice. Or even William, whose name didn't appear in any related file. It was meant for someone else. A shadow figure sitting behind the scenes of the royal legacy. But the true gut punch comes when Eugenie discovers the recipient of the ghost trust and realizes it was never meant for her, or Beatrice, or even William. The papers named a child no one talks about, a name erased from every public registry, but still very much alive. Hidden, protected, and now exposed. Eugenie realizes this so-called inheritance shift wasn't an accident. It was a plan, and it started long before she was even born. The name on the document was chilling in its simplicity. A. Fitzroy. Nothing more. A ghost on paper. Yet the financial power linked to this alias was staggering: multiple trusts, untraceable withdrawals, layers of legal camouflage. Eugenie's instincts screamed that this wasn't a code name for a fund or shell company. It was a person. Someone real. Someone the monarchy had gone to extreme lengths to shield from the world. And now, that veil was beginning to tear. Determined to uncover the truth, she chased the trail overseas, following the transactions to a discreet educational institution, nestled in the Swiss Alps, privately funded, notoriously secretive, and until now, completely off the radar. It was there, beneath the cold walls of the school's financial department, that she confirmed what she had feared. Royal money had been flowing into that place for over a decade. Tuition, housing, security, all covered by a fund established under a name tied to the crown, but with no public acknowledgement. When Eugenie pushed harder, she received nothing but evasions. No photos, no records, not even a confirmation that the student had ever attended. But a former staff member, speaking under the condition of anonymity, admitted that British security had visited the child on multiple occasions, and that a very high-level donor had arranged for complete privacy, even from the school's own board. The pieces were snapping into place faster than she could keep up. This wasn't just another royal cousin. This was someone closer. Someone central. Unable to rely on institutions, Eugenie turned to science. Using a smuggled personal item retrieved from a known Balmoral staffer, an old toothbrush discarded during a secret visit, she ran a private DNA test through discreet channels. The results left her reeling, a 99.8% match to the Windsor bloodline. There was no doubt. A. Fitzroy was royal. Illegitimate, yes, but undeniably of the blood. The whispers began to make a terrible kind of sense. Eugenie had heard the rumors once, long ago, in hushed tones and behind locked doors, of a wartime romance Charles had before Diana, of a child whose existence would have upended everything if acknowledged. But this wasn't just old gossip. This was the smoking gun. And worse, the Queen had known. One passage from the letter now rang louder than ever. What was kept from the light must be restored through legacy. The debt must be paid forward, not back. Overwhelmed by the weight of what she'd uncovered, Eugenie turned to the one person she hoped might tell her she was wrong, Princess Anne. But instead of disbelief, Anne's face darkened into something between fury and grief. She confirmed the whispers, confessed her own suspicions, and admitted that she had once tried to trace the child herself but had been warned off. She didn't say by whom, only that silence had been the price of survival. Yet even Anne, unshakable and duty-bound, was shaken by the scale of the deception. She called it what it was, a second line, hidden in plain sight. But before Eugenie can go public, palace operatives make their move, and what happens next threatens to destroy not only her credibility, but her safety. The moment she scheduled her first press meeting, everything went wrong. Her phone disconnected, her security team replaced, and worst of all, someone inside the palace issued a gag order in her name. Princess Eugenie was being erased in real time. It started with a simple anomaly. Her calendar entries vanished. Then her access to encrypted royal email systems was revoked without warning. At first, she thought it was a glitch until she realized this wasn't accidental. Her devices were wiped remotely, her backups scrubbed. When she tried to log into internal servers to access the Queen's letter once more, her permissions were denied. She had become a digital ghost in the span of hours. It was swift, surgical, and unmistakably deliberate. Within the palace walls, this wasn't just containment, it was obliteration. Word spread quickly among the staff, but no one dared speak to her directly. Then came the leak. A senior aide, disillusioned and anonymous, sent her a copy of an internal memo marked Urgent Response Protocol. The order was chilling in its precision. Limit Eugenie's exposure. Revoke clearance. Engage media compliance channels. She sat motionless, reading those words again and again, unable to believe the truth of them. The royal family wasn't just silencing her, they were launching a counter-offensive. Overnight, major media outlets began to shift. Articles about her foundation quietly disappeared. Scheduled interviews were postponed indefinitely. News anchors who once praised her poise now ignored her name altogether. Her public image wasn't under scrutiny, it was being scrubbed. Then Beatrice tried to speak. She made a quiet call to a friend at a UK paper, suggesting something bigger was coming. Hours later, she was uninvited from a high-profile royal event, her place on the guest list mysteriously withdrawn. No explanation given. It was a message no one would be spared. The system was closing ranks. Still, Eugenie refused to be rattled. But when she received the summons to Clarence House, her resolve was tested. They said it was for reconciliation, a chance to clear the air. She knew better. This wasn't a discussion, it was a warning. The meeting was tense, formal, and emotionally loaded. Charles stood at the center, guarded not by aides but by silence. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't beg. He simply laid down the stakes. "You are my niece," he said, "and what you've uncovered, if released, will damage us beyond repair. Protect the family, not destroy it." His voice carried the weight of a monarch, but behind it, there was something darker. Not just desperation, but fear. Eugenie realized then that he wasn't just trying to protect the institution, he was trying to protect himself. Every answer she sought had a name. Every shadow pointed back to him. But Eugenie refuses to back down, and what she does next flips the monarchy on its head. With nothing left to lose, Eugenie records a video message, bypasses royal communications, and publishes it directly to the world. Her voice, shaking but determined, becomes the spark that ignites a royal rebellion. And within hours, Buckingham Palace is in full crisis mode. No PR team. No pre-approval. No palace filter. Just Eugenie, standing alone, with the full weight of centuries pressing down on her shoulders and refusing to crumble. In the now viral footage, she lays it all out. No hesitation. No coded language. She speaks plainly and with fire. The secret inheritance clause. The offshore accounts. The redirected trusts. The mysterious child, A. Fitzroy, confirmed as royal by blood but erased by history. And then, like a dagger, she reads directly from the Queen's own final letter, the damning lines etched forever into digital memory. There are truths too heavy for the crown to carry in life. Eugenie doesn't stop there. She names titles that were once considered untouchable. She lists dates, bank transfers, trustees, and properties that have quietly changed hands. She points directly to the missing documentation files that disappeared after her initial inquiries, erased not by accident but by command. This is not about revenge, she says, her voice stealing with each word. This is about truth, and what the British people have a right to know. For 22 minutes, she dismantles the facade of royal perfection, exposing what she calls a calculated betrayal of legacy. And then she ends the video with a line that will be quoted around the world: "Silence is not loyalty. Silence is complicity. And I choose neither." The reaction is immediate, explosive, global. Within an hour, the hashtag #EugenieTruth dominates every platform. Within 12, her words are broadcast across continents. Within 48, over 100 million views have been logged, with the number climbing every second. News anchors drop pre-scheduled programming to air clips of her message. Influential voices, celebrities, journalists, even foreign dignitaries begin to weigh in. Some praise her bravery, others question her motives. But no one can ignore her anymore. Eugenie has shattered the wall of silence with one defiant strike. And inside the palace, panic sets in. Emergency meetings are convened. Legal teams scramble. Internal memos demand damage control. But the world has already seen too much. The monarchy is no longer in control of the narrative. And then, in a moment no one anticipated, a new voice enters the storm. Not a journalist. Not a politician. but a royal figure the institution had long believed to be silent, distant, or defeated. As the world reacts, one figure steps forward, someone no one expected to back Eugenie's claims publicly. The stoic, unshakable Princess Anne stuns the world by stepping in front of cameras for the first time in years, not to defend the crown, but to support Eugenie. Her confession shakes the monarchy even harder than Eugenie's broadcast. For decades, Anne was the firm spine of the royal family, unyielding, unshaken, and above all, loyal. But when she stepped to the microphone, her face uncharacteristically somber, the silence in the room was deafening. She didn't read from a script. She didn't glance at advisors. Her voice was steady, but her words were thunder. She began by stating plainly, "I knew." She had known about the alternate heir clause since the early 90s, when she came across a classified document bearing her father's seal and her mother's signature. It wasn't theoretical, she said. It was active, buried in legal structures and trusts meant to protect the unspoken. The moment she uttered those words, the public perception of Eugenie shifted from rebel to truth-teller. The monarchy had officially fractured from within. Anne spoke of arguments behind closed doors, painful confrontations with the Queen, where voices were raised and tears were shed. It was about children, she said. Children who were denied names, rights, and place, all to maintain a myth. Her voice cracked only once when she admitted she had tried to intervene, but had been threatened with forced retirement from royal duties. "I was told that if I ever breathed a word of it, my service would end. And I believed, foolishly, that silence might preserve what little peace remained." The shame in her eyes was unmistakable. She didn't try to excuse her silence. Instead, she apologized to the public, to Eugenie, to Beatrice, to anyone who had ever felt cast aside by a system more concerned with illusion than integrity. "I failed," she said. And Eugenie succeeded, because she had the courage none of us could summon. That single line went viral within minutes. It was printed on T-shirts, chanted in protests, repeated by journalists around the globe. Anne's confession wasn't just a turning point, it was a reckoning. And with her blessing, Eugenie's claims were no longer seen as fringe accusations, but as revelations demanding accountability. Public outcry exploded into action. Thousands called for a royal audit. Petitions demanding transparency from the Crown's financial institutions surged into the hundreds of thousands. Parliamentary whispers became shouts. The demand was clear. It was time to pull back the curtain on centuries of secrecy. Yet even as the momentum swung in Eugenie's favor, even as truth broke through the walls of Buckingham, a new chill swept through the palace corridors. The firm was not done. But just as the tide turns in Eugenie's favor, the palace launches its final countermeasure, and it's not just legal. Faced with global pressure and an unraveling legacy, the Crown strikes back hard. Lawyers, courts, defamation suits, character assassinations. Every tool in the royal arsenal is deployed against Eugenie, but what they don't expect is who joins her side in the 11th hour. Within days of Anne's explosive confession, palace corridors turn cold and calculated. The firm's strategy becomes clear. If they cannot silence Eugenie through persuasion or shame, they will dismantle her piece by piece. Royal lawyers file emergency motions in multiple jurisdictions to prevent the Queen's final letter and Eugenie's evidence from reaching the public record. They argue national security, historical integrity, constitutional stability, anything to keep the truth locked away behind polished doors. But in doing so, they only pour fuel onto a fire already burning out of control. Then, the attacks get personal. Anonymous sources begin leaking to the press. Suddenly, obscure stories surface about alleged mismanagement of Eugenie's charitable funds, half-truths twisted into scandal. Whispers swirl about her marriage, her motivations, her state of mind. An unflattering photo is pushed across tabloids with surgical precision. She becomes the target, the distraction. And behind the curtain, donors to her foundation receive veiled threats letters suggesting reputational risk if they continue to support her. It's a coordinated takedown designed to humiliate, isolate, and overwhelm. But Eugenie does not crumble. Instead, the pressure hardens her resolve. She understands now what this is really about. Not inheritance, not scandal, but power. And who dares to challenge it? And then something extraordinary happens. Parliament, long a silent observer in royal affairs, begins to stir. Fueled by public outrage, a group of MPs draft a motion to investigate inheritance structures within the monarchy itself, a move without precedent in modern times. The very architecture of the crown's wealth is on the table, and Eugenie, once dismissed as a peripheral royal, is at the center of it all. And just when the firm believes they've cornered her, the first unexpected ally steps forward. From across the Atlantic, Prince Harry makes contact. His message is brief, but potent. I believe her. And if needed, I will testify. The implications are seismic. For the first time, a senior royal willingly breaks ranks to support Eugenie's account, and he isn't alone. Meghan releases a blistering op-ed titled, "The Truth Shall Inherit," condemning the institution's history of silencing dissent and calling Eugenie a symbol of courage in a dynasty built on secrecy. The piece ignites international media and reignites debate in every corner of the globe. The palace scrambles, issuing carefully worded denials, but the damage is done. A new narrative is taking shape, one they can't control. The old guard is losing its grip, and Eugenie, once painted as reckless, is now seen as righteous. But her fight isn't over. With battle lines drawn and the monarchy facing a reckoning, Eugenie makes one final move that changes everything forever. In the most shocking twist yet, Eugenie unveils her final document signed by the Queen herself, an alternate royal charter that redistributes titles and wealth based on merit, not bloodline. The monarchy will never be the same again. For days, speculation had been mounting about what Eugenie's final move would be. Whispers hinted at something big, but no one expected what came next. In a live broadcast streamed across every major network, Eugenie stood once more, not to accuse, not to defend, but to reveal. In her hands was a charter, not a proposal, not a petition, but a formal, signed declaration, dated and authenticated, penned in the Queen's own hand, and bearing her personal seal. It was the Queen's last vision for the monarchy, written in private, hidden from Parliament, and entrusted to no one until now. Its contents would redefine royal legacy forever. The alternate charter laid out a radical restructuring of succession, not erasing tradition, but challenging its rigidity. At its heart was a powerful statement. Future titles and assets must be earned, not inherited blindly. It named a new council of succession, one composed of family members and independent public figures charged with overseeing royal property, trust disbursements, and intergenerational responsibilities. Shock rippled through the palace and beyond. For the first time in history, the Queen had imagined a monarchy accountable, not just to lineage, but to principle. And at the center of it, she had placed Eugenie, not as heir, but as steward. A caretaker of royal integrity, a guardian of balance. The very role the institution had once tried to strip from her, now bestowed with the Queen's deepest trust. Eugenie's voice cracked only once as she read aloud the line that changed everything. Let merit guide what birth once claimed. The statement sent shockwaves across the Commonwealth. Suddenly, Eugenie's fight was no longer seen as rebellion, it was revelation. A future the Queen herself had envisioned but never lived to announce. The pressure on the palace became unbearable. With mounting public outcry and increasing political pressure, the firm had no choice. For the sake of survival, they reluctantly agreed to a formal review. A historic commission was announced, tasked with examining the Crown's finances, its succession practices, and the validity of the charter. Parliament backed the motion unanimously. For the first time in over a century, the monarchy was being asked not just to rule, but to answer. Then came a moment that would freeze history. Prince William, silent throughout the chaos, released a statement that neither condemned nor condoned, but changed everything. The path forward, he wrote, must be built on truth, transparency, and healing. We owe that to our past and to our future. It was brief, but seismic. In one line, he extended a hand not just to Eugenie, but to the people watching, questioning, hoping. The public, already shifting, now surged. Eugenie was no longer painted as a disruptor. She was a reformer, a royal reborn through fire and defiance. Polls flipped, media turned, crowds gathered outside her residence not in protest, but in praise. And as the monarchy trembles on the edge of a new era, one thing is clear: nothing will ever be the same again. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.